we have a great panel here that some of them are going to be connected with Parkland, some of them are on the periphery, but they all have a great story. Bob Huffaker was a reporter with KRLD before he became Santa Claus, and he was one of the finest reporters around the city in those days. Bob, you want to tell us what you saw and heard and did?
Thanks, Bert. I'm not really Santa Claus, but he is a close personal friend. It's good to see a lot of these good folks like Jimmy Darnell, who just sat next to me, and I haven't seen him for decades, and Bert as well. We at KRLD had planned our broadcast to begin at Love Field. There, Frank Gleber and Wes Wise began. Frank described the arrival of Air Force One, and Wes then took up the broadcast at Lemon and Inwood. He described the motorcade at that location, and later, as you know, Wes became mayor of Dallas and improved the image that the city had received during those days. And we were working, as some of the print media people have already pointed out, with tools that certainly are primitive by today's standards. Frank and Wes and I were broadcasting on little low-band two-way radios, and you had to hold the switch down or you were off the air. And we had to depend on our KRLD tower, which still spans what is now KDFW downtown. Oh, and by the way, with the way we took our cues from each other, I had a little transistor radio hanging around my neck with a earpiece in it, and that was our only means of communication as long as we were on the air. So I took my cue from Wes, from Lemon and Inwood, and then I began my broadcast from Main and Akron downtown. Long before the motorcade arrived, our object was to stay on the air until Eddie Barker, our news director, who was to cover the matter from the Trade Mart, was to pick it up, and at that point we were to broadcast President Kennedy's address live on both radio and television. But at this point we were just on radio, and television was broadcasting some ridiculous soap opera at the time. I took my cue from Wes and held forth until I described the passing of the motorcade, and then I kept on continuing with an analysis of the political reasons for Kennedy's visit to Texas as long as I could, so that the motorcade would have time to reach the Trade Mart, where Eddie Barker would then take over the broadcast. And I was, of course, still broadcasting when the shots were fired in Dealey Plaza, and I was totally unaware of that, being, as some of the House's Select Committee analysts have now told me, I was 1,500 feet away, because they've tried desperately to pick up the shots out of my tape and have been unsuccessful in that. I then finally, after I had held it for as long as I could and assumed that Eddie must have been ready to pick it up by then, I stopped my broadcast, gave my out cue, and folded up my gear. I had KRLD's only unmarked mobile unit, a sort of a scruffy black Mercury Comet station wagon, and which, by the way, still, wherever it is, in whatever junkyard it's ended up, probably bears the scars of the people who crawled all over it when the motorcade passed. I then drove the block and a half back to our KRLD newsroom, which was still in a small building outside the main building at the time, and pulled up in front, getting ready to get out of the car and go inside. Warren Folks, who was doing our 10 o'clock news anchor at the time, an excellent newsman, and I wish he were here. Warren came running out the front door and told me the president had been shot and taken to Parkland Hospital. So I said, well, grab a camera and let's go. It was at that point that all of us on the KRLD news team simply began to function by instinct, because all of our plans for the day had gone out the window. And I then made it out Harry Hines Boulevard faster than I have ever made it anywhere else. Ran into a big cardboard box on the way out and knocked it out of the street. Then got to the hospital, where they had just cordoned off the entrance so that we could not get back to the emergency room through normal channels. But being a younger, much younger newsman, I simply took that old car, and which was sort of new at the time, and jumped curbs all the way across the parking lot to get back to the emergency room. I had covered the emergency room and the police beat a lot as a reporter for KRLD.
Got about a minute there, Bob.
That's it?
No, you got another minute.
Oh, another minute. Okay, Bert, thanks for the cue. I then broadcast and stayed on the air as much as possible. We stayed on the air. That was what we were trying to do. Keep information coming as much as possible. And Warren Fulks and I alternated on the microphone while the other one of us would go in and meet the little press conferences given by Malcolm Kilduff inside. And we were giving Connolly's condition and what information was being released at the time. And I was interviewing Ralph Yarbrough, Congressman Ray Roberts, people like that who were still walking stunned around the back entrance of the emergency room. And when Eddie finally announced that the president had died, we had not found it out even there outside the emergency room yet. And I was interviewing Jim Wright at the time. And it was at that point that I finally became so emotional about it that I could hardly go on. And I simply said, I know no one wants to say anything at a time like this, Congressman Wright, but do you have anything to say? And I handed him the mic. And Jim Wright prayed into my microphone. I have always liked him ever since.
Let's say amen to that.
That's right.
Thank you, Bob.
And I held forth there until the hearse finally departed. Later on, my beat was the Dallas Police Headquarters, where I broadcast the live CBS coverage of the shooting of Oswald, among other things, along with Nelson Benton, our associate from CBS.
And I'm going to ask something personal now. This is kind of an inside thing, and unless you know Huffaker and Wise and all of this group of mine back from those days, you won't really appreciate this, but you'll bear with me. Bob was down in the basement that morning, and he and Nelson Benton, from the late Nelson Benton, were kind of taking turns just sort of waiting things out until they brought Oswald down. And so when they brought him down, it turned out that Bob had the mic. And I was back in the newsroom, we were all watching this, and so Bob starts screaming into that mic, Lee Harold has been shot. Lee Harold has been shot. And I'm kicking the wastebasket and saying, his name ain't Harold. and Huffaker has got a story, can tell us why he called him Lee Harold. And he's going to hang it on somebody we all know.
They're going to put they're going to put that on my epitaph. My Andy Warhol 15 minutes, and I got the guy's name wrong. Don't take 15 minutes
to tell this, please.
What happened was when Nelson and Dan Rather and I were sort of rotating around City Hall and trading off with the CBS live television mic. One of us would stand by the mic, and New York would call for us on just a couple of minutes' notice, and we would have to give a summary of how everything stood at that time. And also, we would be among those pushy television reporters who would crowd up to Chief Curry and the other officials who passed through the hallways up there. And Dan spent most of his time elsewhere in town, but Nelson and I would circulate around the police station and try to verify items of information and do that sort of thing. And during one of those times on the Saturday before Oswald was shot on Sunday, I thought, well, I had gone, by the way, I'd been at Parkland Hospital the previous evening, and my assignment at the police station didn't begin until that Saturday morning. And so I had a full set of notes that I had already received from Warren Fulks, who had been our reporter there the previous night. And on that set of notes, it had all the correct information. It had Lee Harvey Oswald, age 24, ex-Marine, and all of those items that I needed to know to go ahead and continue the reporting. And I thought, well, nobody's really gone in and checked the public information officer yet. So during a time when Nelson had the mic, I left and went down to Glenn King's office. He was the police public information officer at the time. And Glenn King, wherever you are, I'm going to blame you for this. But I sat down across the desk from Glenn, and I began to go through my notes and just double-check every piece of information I had, because I was always very thorough. Later became a college professor, you can understand. So I went over every item of information. Lee Harvey Oswald, I read him, and he said, no, it's Lee Harold Oswald. And I said, well, now, everybody has been, I mean, since yesterday, everybody's been saying Lee Harvey Oswald. Are you certain that this is Lee Harold Oswald? And he said, absolutely, it's Lee Harold Oswald. And I said, well, now, Glenn, where did you get that information? He said, I got it off the arrest record. So I thought, okay. And I marked it out. I still have my notes where I marked out Lee Harvey and wrote in Lee Harold. And from that moment on, I thought I was the only guy who was right. I have ruined myself for history.
Okay, right.
This is Bob Huffaker again at Main and Akron in downtown Dallas. And the first red lights are now visible coming far down the street, just having now turned right hand onto Main off of Harwood. And the large police escort is now ahead of the presidential motorcade. Buses are pulled over to the side of the street, and the crowd is surging forward to close in somewhat on the leading cars. There are 5, 6, 7 motorcycles still here in front of the first cars. And the crowd at our point is surging forward. There's a big cheer going up as the president gets further down. And now the ticker tape and other confetti and such is beginning to flow from the windows all over the large buildings here and engulf the entire motorcade. Here comes the first car with Police Chief Jess Curry and Sheriff Bill Decker. And here is the President of the United States. And what a crowd, what a tremendous welcome he's getting now. We can, and there's Jackie. She's getting just as big a welcome, and the crowd is absolutely going wild. This is a friendly crowd in downtown Dallas as the President and the First Lady pass by. There is Lyndon Johnson and Lady Bird passing by in the second car behind Moore. And here come the congressmen in their automobiles. And there comes the press. They're shooting the entire crowd as they move along here. Here is KRLD's cameraman Jim Underwood along with others, and more press people coming by. As we can see, the presidential limousine even further down the street. It's a tremendous welcome, not a placard in downtown Dallas. And here comes the White House press. The big chartered bus is now arriving. And more limousines. The entire motorcade is now being, as we can see the rear of it, it's the crowd's closing in behind the motorcade. And up ahead of the motorcade, far down the street towards Simmons Freeway, we can see the crowd is absolutely going wild, and there's more ticker tape falling out of the windows. There are people absolutely looking from every window here in downtown Dallas. And it was a wonderful welcome as the President and Jacqueline Kennedy passed our point at Main and Akron. The latter part of the motorcade has just passed, and now the entire Main Street is completely filled from building to building with people. And they're following the motorcade down towards Simmons Freeway. The people really enjoyed that one glimpse of the President of the United States and Jacqueline Kennedy. They're going further down, and just about now, as we can see far, far down Main Street towards Simmons Freeway. The motorcade is just about to reach the location of the county courthouse. And the people are still running down Main Street following the presidential motorcade. The enthusiastic welcome that broke loose here at Main and Akron has followed the president all the way through, and thousands of people who were crowding the streets here are following the motorcade even further down Main Street towards Simmons Freeway. It was a wonderful welcome for President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy. There was certainly no adverse demonstration. It was a tremendous welcome that Big D gave our chief executive. The presidential motorcade is now just far out, almost out of our sight, and the only thing still visible above the heads of thousands upon thousands of people who are still following the motorcade down Main Street towards Simmons Freeway, just the very top of the big buses carrying the official party and the congressman as well as the White House press.
And now we take you to a KRLD mobile news unit and Bob Huffaker.
This is Bob Huffaker. I am at Parkland Hospital along with Warren Folks for KRLD News. What was a wonderful welcome in downtown Dallas has become a scene of indescribable horror as hundreds of people crowd outside the back door to the emergency room here at Parkland Hospital. Faces are ashen white, and people are wondering, is our president going to live? President Kennedy is on the inside of Parkland Hospital, and two priests have just been sent in to the room with the president. Speaking a moment ago to Congressman Jim Wright, Yarborough a moment ago told KRLD News he saw a Secret Service man beating the rear of the car on which the president was riding with his fist, and he knew something horrible had happened. Senator Yarborough said he didn't know the extent of the injuries. No one knows those at present except those inside the hospital, and Senator Yarborough said he believed them to be very grave. At present, reporters are being held outside the back door of Parkland Hospital, waiting some announcement, some word on the condition of the president.
And now we take you to Parkland Hospital and Bob Huffaker.
We're at Parkland Hospital where the horrible announcement has just come that our president is dead. Still here at Parkland Hospital, even though the announcement has been made to newsmen. Some people are still unaware what has happened, and momentarily people will rush up to us. When Congressman Wright began to cry a short while ago, people began to rush over to our mobile news unit and say, what has happened? What has happened? How is the president? We had to say what had happened. People are standing outside this emergency entrance to Parkland Hospital and weeping bitterly. Senator Ralph Yarborough, Congressman Ray Roberts. We can see Congressman Olin Teague of the 6th District. All are crying. None can express what they feel. The only question that remains in most of their minds, all they can say now, is how is John? They mean, of course, Governor John Connally. The latest word on the condition of Governor Connally, although no firm report has yet been made, the word is that Governor Connally was shot in the right upper chest. This is only rumor at this time and has not yet been confirmed. Still, the crowd awaits further news. The crowd waits with disbelief in their eyes. People are crying all around us. Newsmen who see death every day are crying. Congressmen, senators who love the president. A scene of indescribable sadness and horror at the emergency entrance of Dallas Parkland Hospital. This is Bob Huffaker for KRLD News.
We are now switching to Dallas, where they are about to move Lee Oswald and where there's a scuffle in the police station.
Has been shot.
Lee Oswald. Oswald has been shot.
We're going to switch now.
Police
Police are pulling.
We're going to switch now to Bob Huffaker down in the basement of the courthouse, who is close to the scene. Go ahead, Bob.
The situation is now that Lee Harold Oswald has been shot. The man who saw the shot fired said it was fired by a man wearing a black hat, a brown coat, a man that everyone down here thought was a Secret Service agent. Oswald was moved immediately from the area. No one knows at this time where Lee Harold Oswald is. At the present time, word is that an ambulance is being ready to take Oswald away. We can hear sirens outside, and an ambulance apparently is moving down now into the basement. Here comes the ambulance, and Oswald will be removed now. The ambulance is being pulled up in front of us here. It's unbelievable. Here, someone has actually...
Please, get back. Back. Okay, just get low. Okay.
Pat, can you move? Okay. Pat, move just a little to your left.
We can see now that police are hemming off newsmen in the basement of the Dallas City Hall, hemming them off so that Lee Oswald can be taken to an ambulance, which was just brought into the basement of the City Hall. We're switching now to Bob Huffaker downstairs.
Oswald will be moved quickly outside, and the only word so far is that the shot came from a man wearing a black hat and a coat. Here comes Oswald. He is ashen and unconscious at this time, now being moved in. He's not moving. He's in the ambulance now, and attendants, police are quickly climbing in. They're now having to remove the armored truck from the head of the basement entrance here.
This is the armored truck on the outside of the Dallas Police Department. It's being moved out onto Commerce Street, and now the ambulance is coming out. The ambulance with Lee Harvey Oswald, who was shot just a few minutes ago as he was being transferred